and welcome to the Privacy Podcast. I am Tom Woods, and I am joined here today by Tahir Latif. Tahir is the global head of privacy and AI governance at Cognizant. He also sits on the IAPP Global Advisory Board alongside many other very good things. Welcome, Tahir. How are you doing?
Thank you, Tom. Happy Friday. I'm doing really well, thanks. And thank you for inviting me onto your new series of what I hope will be very exciting podcast to discuss privacy and the future of our profession.
Absolutely. Talking of that, how was Brussels? How was the IAPP AI gathering?
It was the first one in Europe. Last year, the inaugural event was held in Boston, which was very well attended, of course, with all of the excitement around AI governance.
Mm.
Brussels was a really interesting event. It was um, smaller than the European Congress, which is held in November, but the numbers of attendees were really focused on AI and AI governance, so very
Mm.
focused group, and also a lot of time for networking, information sharing, right? Really getting and sharing knowledge, experiences, use cases. Just the actual networking angle alone was worth it. Really
Mm.
enjoyable event. Was also fortunate enough to be doing the teaching for the IAPP AI governance professional course there, and that's always enjoyable because you get to meet your peers from around the world.
Yeah.
You share knowledge, but of course, with each training event, you learn from each other. It's not just a case of they're there to learn from me about what AI governance looks like, but their real world use cases that are their challenges. So we all learn from each other. It's really great for sharing knowledge and, of course, as I said, building up your network.
Yes, vital stuff, especially everyone's in this together, right? No one's got, you have more experience than most, but everyone is kind of doing this at the same time, right? So that information sharing is vital because it is real, not just real world, but real time as well, learning in terms of how to deal with these challenges and build out the risk frameworks and, take care of these things as well.
There's no as what we might call experts in this domain. We're
Mm.
continuously learning, irrespective of which background we're coming from. So yes, there's experts in AI engineering and data science. Of course, it's a very mature domain, but in terms of AI governance being
Mm.
relatively new, we're all learning from each other. So I might be there presenting the actual materials, but it's a two-way flow of information.
Mm. No, absolutely. And so that kind of moves into the first sort of part of this in terms of the role of the CPO and in terms of becoming more critical. Obviously, we're talking about AI governance there, but a lot of other areas. What is really important from your perspective, working with a lot of different CPOs, a lot of different organizations as I do, in terms of getting CPOs to establish themselves as vital members and actually launching themselves into the C-suite rather than it being a title, it being an actual serious C-suite and doing those sort of influential pieces.
Well, I mean, the CPO role is very important, and it's a lot that I'm sure many of your viewers and your podcast will aspire to. We have to remove ourselves from our narrow lens of data privacy, and if we are DPOs, we have to think broader. So the first thing that you have to be able to demonstrate to C-suite is your business acumen. Yes, you're coming from a privacy background, but how does that align with how do you align and translate the privacy regulations into strategic business advantages? So, for example, leveraging global regulatory compliance to build customer trust and to differentiate from competitors. We know from analysts such as Gartner that being able to show and demonstrate trust has a 2.7x return on investment. Also, We have to be able to show operational efficiencies. We have to deduplicate. So as the relevant teams go through the process of privacy by design, ensure that the stakeholders engage at the earliest possible opportunity. So there's not multiple different stakeholders doing the same thing. C-suite does not like duplication, and of course, with duplication comes the increase in cost. So show how you can streamline, deduplicate, and always show value.
Mm.
Another very important thing is to be able to communicate effectively, articulate the value of privacy initiatives in business terms. I talked about Gartner earlier. Use metrics and risk assessments to highlight how privacy efforts contribute to risk management and operational resilience. And there, next year we've got the a new act coming into effect, which is called DORA. Privacy teams and CPOs are playing a large part of that operational resiliency. Show how you can translate privacy into forthcoming regulations by using what we already have. Again, you're showing value and you're deduplicating. Very important, of course, that you can build strategic alliances with key stakeholders, IT, legal, marketing teams, and of course, engage with industry peers and regulators. Go to these events, go to the large conferences, and show and be visible so that C-suite see that you're a thought leader.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think so much of it comes from communication, right? Because there is a perception of privacy in a lot of C-suites' minds in terms of it being a cost center or an organization, a part of an organization that says no quite often. And so much of it is about that communication piece in terms of demonstrating that value and never assuming that that value is seen or heard unless you have raised it appropriately and demonstrated the strategic use of what it is you're doing. So,
Absolutely.
yes, I think that communication piece is as vital, almost as technical expertise in a lot of cases in terms of actually making inroads in terms of an organization. And so that kind of brings me on to balancing privacy. As I sort of said, there is a function that can be seen as saying no. How do you balance that with innovation? And maybe we can look at that from the perspective of you mentioned Nora there, of the EU AI Act coming in, because again, that's where a lot of things are being greenlit in terms of funding, in terms of business
Yeah.
initiatives. Privacy, a vital part of that. A lot of CPOs being given the responsibility of AI governance frameworks. In IAPP says 50% of cases. I would imagine actually it's going to end up larger than that.
Yeah.
How does a good CPO balance that from a business perspective?
First and foremost, is not to shoulder all of the responsibility within the privacy team. So critical to success for innovation and privacy is cross-functional collaboration. We need to have, firstly, for specifically for the EU AI Act, identify which stakeholders will be required to bring their knowledge and their skill sets so we can really put together a solid governance framework to enable the organization to move forward and to develop products that will come within the remit and the risk appetite of the organization. That can only come through communication and cross team collaboration. We also, of course, need strong C suite support. So if you are the chief privacy officer, ensure that the teams are empowered and they have the relevant influence within the organization so you can onboard those team members that will be pivotal in the success of a much wider governance team, be it the AI governance team or whatever title you choose to use within your organization. And then in terms of the innovation, we're very familiar with privacy by design and default, and of course, we're going to utilize that at the start of all the discussions for AI and AI product development. So, at the planning phase, the privacy team there gets involved. The privacy, and I'm going to use the term the AI governance team because the privacy team will be a part of that. Will get involved in these conversations and talking about what is it, and then linking it back to your first question, Tom. Straight away, we talk about the business use case. What is it that the business wants to achieve? Right? What is the outcome that's required from the specific business unit? And then ask the question, is AI or machine learning or whatever they choose to utilize in terms of a model, is it the answer? So start, retain our privacy hats and then go through the sort of flow charts in our minds in, okay, this is the intended purpose, aligned to the intended purpose, and now go through our questions. Is AI the answer? If it is, how can we then ensure privacy by design and default, right? In terms of the types of data that's being used, the personal data elements, can we minimize those? Do we have the correct legal basis? Do we have the training data in-house? If we look to onboard it externally, are we sure of the provenance? So all of the questions that we ask for privacy, we can build upon that. But remember, we have to align with the business use case, and we can't always keep our privacy hats on as number one. We have to think about mitigations in terms of achieving the business case. And this is how we show that value and alignment with corporate objectives. So, utilizing privacy enhancing technology is definitely one of my go-to methods. So we can move forward with the AI itself, the deployment of AI, but in a manner that is aligned with privacy and security principles. So utilizing really cutting edge homomorphic encryption, variant twins, and other measures such as synthetic data. These are all on my sort of go-to methods to ensure that we can innovate and move forward in a manner that's trustworthy and compliant.
Absolutely. And when, just to talk a little bit, sort of move track almost, talking about hiring within privacy, and how that works, how you found doing so in your time, but also how you see it with clients that you work with, in particular the effect that perhaps remote work, the increase of that over the last 4 years, has impacted things at all from your perspective. How is that, and how have you seen that in terms of challenges, or what have you seen that's worked quite well when you've been hiring or seen others do so?
Okay, well, I mean, remote work prior to lockdown was, perhaps if you were very lucky, 1 to 2 days a week, Tom.
Yeah,
Of course,
very
significantly
lucky.
changed. Yeah, significantly changed now. Where, I mean, you would know better than me, but certainly three days working from home is very much accepted, and it's kind of between two and 3 days in the office now is very much the norm, right? And
Yes.
totally acceptable. So let's first deal with the challenges that we faced largely during lockdown. Of course, the challenges we had then was increased data breach risks because we had teams working remotely. We didn't have all the controls in place in terms of the security protocols for remote access, and regular updates of software and hardware. We also had the expanded attack surface with diverse access points. Monitoring and securing of the endpoints is always critical. And then, of course, we had data handling practices. When we were in the office, we were very much in that secure ecosystem. So we had to establish clear guidelines for data handling when working remotely, storage, and of course, sharing in these remote settings to maintain data integrity and confidentiality. So, how did we build diverse and effective privacy teams in in a sort of more remote or hybrid manner? Well, of course, we're very familiar now with leveraging technology. We're collaborating here, Tom, but of course using tools such as Teams or Zoom or Google Meet. So
Mm.
utilize that each and every day when you are working remotely, right? We also have to, in terms of how to build a diverse team, promote diversity and inclusion, actively recruit from diverse talent pools because each of them brings a new perspective, and of course it will help to foster a very inclusive culture. Now, we talked earlier about innovation and AI. One of the key requirements to build out AI in a trustworthy, responsible, and ethical manner is to have a wide set of stakeholders, not only in terms of their skill sets, but in terms of diversity, because that will help us to balance the inherent biases that we feed into the actual design, development, and deployment of AI.
Yeah, absolutely. AI is not magic. It is only the data it's been given and the people that have built it.
Absolutely. AI is not self aware. It doesn't build itself, it doesn't deploy itself, Tom. And I think you really hit it there. AI is the sum of all of the inputs which come from ourselves.
Exactly, which is why we need as many different backgrounds and stories as possible going in to ensure that
Yeah.
it doesn't do the things that humans might do necessarily, and it can be hopefully slightly better than us. And I think that kind of moves us on to the future of privacy. It's kind of a big question, but what are the emerging trends or technologies, legislation? We touched on some of them, but what are the ones, or one in particular for you, that's on the horizon that you think is going to make the biggest impact or most interesting?
I always do a lot of horizon scanning, Tom, and I look forward to. I'm very fortunate in that, Cognizant is a technology solutions company, so we see what clients are doing. We're very fortunate, and then also as a technology company, we look forward to the future. We have thought leadership. We have a whole futures division.
Mm.
So 2 years ago, I was on another podcast, Tom, and I was asked about where do you think the market will go to here, and I said if aspiring privacy professionals or those in our profession or careers start to learn about privacy enhancing technologies, because this is the future of privacy. We've 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 also we've, we've always known about policy and procedure, Tom, but as we go into a tech enabled world, and that we can't remove ourselves from that, the only way we can innovate and advance privacy is utilizing these technologies. So very much at the forefront of all of these technologies. And it's not just about, we've always used these terms, appropriate technical and organizational measures. Well, that's great. How do we do it? So we used to talk to our colleagues in IT or information security and cybersecurity and very much left it to them. But we're now in a position we can say, right, this is what we need to do, and we need your assistance on these technologies. For example, in the world of AI, which is very much pivotal for ourselves as privacy and governance professionals, certainly for the next couple of decades, understanding what synthetic data is and the use cases, understanding differential privacy, moving from encrypted data sets to homomorphic encryption. And why is that important, Tom? Well, we have the advent of quantum computing, right? As this evolves, it poses a potential risk to our current encryption and security methods. So we have to start exploring quantum resistant cryptographic techniques to future proof privacy and data security. AI and machine learning, we've already discussed at length. We need to invest in privacy preserving AI techniques to ensure safe, trustworthy, and of course, ethical AI deployment. But from our perspectives, understanding what that means, the future of our profession, and how we can not just talk about it, but really add value. And then, what certainly keeps us busy is the constantly changing and evolving jurisdictional landscape, Tom. There's too much to mention. Okay, right now the EU AI Act is front and center, but we know that's one of at least a dozen, right, that are being discussed, are in the pipeline. And the same way that GDPR was pivotal back in 2016, the Brussels effect and the EU AI Act will now certainly go global, and countries and jurisdictions will be onboarding their own version of AI regulations. And of course, privacy regulations constantly evolve. Tom, it certainly keeps you very busy in your line of business, right? Because we can't, if there's one key takeaway, learning and development, professional development in our profession is key. Do not rest on your laurels. I'm very fortunate to be where I am today because I kept on learning, kept on developing. I'm very fortunate to be on the global advisory board, training advisory board for the IAPP. I'm fortunate enough to be advising regulators on ethical and responsible AI and global boards. And the way I was able to achieve that was through constantly learning, staying ahead, scanning what was coming, getting those skill sets. And I mentor a lot of our peers, Tom, around the globe in terms of what you should be learning, how to get ahead in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the question I'm asked often as well. And it is what's always the question is what's next? Because people already know, right? It's rarely is it me telling them what's next. It's often getting them to think about, well, what's next? Well, okay, are you involved in it? Well, okay, be involved in it. Because for me, when it comes to, well, our client's going to be asking that, if you're interviewing with the CCO or with the CRO or general counsel for a CPO position, like they're going to be asking about AI governance now. Have you been involved in it? Have you been part of the steering committees? Have you been heading it
Yeah,
up? And how would you go about building the risk framework? And if you're not front of center in your organization, and it's always difficult, every organization sets it up differently.
absolutely.
But if you're not front and center of it now, the next role is going to ask that question. And so it is.
Yeah.
It is about thinking forwards.
Tom, just on your point there, even if you haven't been empowered to lead the AI governance, which is absolutely fine because there's no one size fits all, right? Get yourself involved in the actual committee or the steering group. Get yourself involved and learn and show your value so that you have the knowledge. So if you are asked if you want to move on to a new role, tell us what you've done for AI governance. Oh, I was a member of the steering group. You don't necessarily have to lead it. And not all of these committees are led by DPOs or CPOs. We play a part. You're talking about, in terms of careers, Chief AI Governance Officer is now a career path, right? Many of the regulations stipulate in the same way that we had DPOs for GDPR, there's a stipulation for AI officers. And they're not going to be asking you, Tom, tell us about your previous 10 or 15 years in data privacy, because that ship has very much sailed. They're going to be like, okay, we understand you come from a solid background. You have to talk more than just privacy. And you can't do that if you haven't immersed yourself in the technology, you haven't upskilled, you haven't continued to develop yourself professionally, and you don't have the use cases from within your organization. Because they're going to ask you, give us examples. Tom, you will brief and mentor your candidates in terms of this is what you need to say. But if in the interview they can't project that, what's the likelihood of success?
Not high.
At least you're
That's
honest,
yes.
eh, Tom? At least you're honest.
It's just the truth. It's just the truth. I would never lie to candidates or clients about that. Whether or not it's pleasant is irrelevant. But there we go. And I think that is a good note to end on. So thank you ever so much for your time to hear. It's been great, and I look forward to speaking with you and hopefully being at the next IAPP event as well.
Okay, Tom, look forward to it, and thanks for inviting me here today.
No
See you later,
worries.
everyone.